finally has their first real animatronic, who then haunts the player for 5 nights and a nightmare night until the place burns down due to faulty wiring.
The end. Take a bow. It's finally over. Well, kinda. We're still left with one final, seemingly impossible question to answer. Who is the purple guy? After spending, I kid you not, full days plotting out all the details of this game franchise on whiteboards, talking it over with anyone who would stand to listen to me ramble on and on about fictional haunted robots, and just looking at it from every possible angle, all logic points to it being the phone guy. And no, not because I made a theory about it and refused to let it die. Honestly, I couldn't care less if that last video was wrong. At this point, I just care about the truth, and phone guy makes the most logical sense. I know your complaints, and I promise you, if you stick with me, you'll be convinced. First, there's the circumstantial evidence I presented during my FNAF 2 theory. Phone guy's admitted love of Foxy being reflected by the smiling purple guy sprite during the Foxy Go minigame. His distrust of the puppet, a creature haunted by his first victim that we see time and time again trying to bring a stop to his killing spree. His admitted role as a security guard, and even the weird phone-like object in his hand from the Save Them minigame. But there's even more evidence when we consider Five Nights 3. Consider this. He's the only person in the game who knows about the safe rooms. As we've mentioned before, all the safe rooms were sealed up back in the Springlock suit days, back in the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, meaning every other employee coming afterward would have never even heard of these things. Phone Guy is the only character we meet who would have any knowledge of these rooms, and more importantly, of how they operate, how they're invisible to the cameras, and more importantly, to animatronics. And that's just the beginning. He's also the only person who knows how to use the Springlock suits. Again, once they were decommissioned, the suits were hidden away. Regardless of whether you believe that the killer used a golden Bonnie suit the whole time, or you think he used a golden Freddy suit, either way, we know for a fact the killer was using one of the yellow spring-locked suits, and Phone Guy is the only character we know who had knowledge of A, where they were hidden, and B, how they were operated safely. Now, I know a lot of people have said that it couldn't have been Phone Guy because he knew better. He knew that they were dangerous and could kill him, so if he was indeed the purple guy, he wouldn't just hop into a Springtrap suit like we see depicted at the ending of FNAF 3. But there's one key detail that everyone has been overlooking and that Scott carefully included in this game. Listen. Hear it? There's rain. There are puddles on the ground. It's dripping from the ceiling. The killer had been using these Springlock suits safely for years, but in his panic to escape the ghosts, he failed to notice the wetness of the building around him. The killer had never encountered this problem before because the building had always been in a decent state of repair, but now it's wrecked, torn apart by age. Rain is able to seep in, something he didn't realize when he was in such a hurry to run away from the ghosts. And if moist breath can loosen the locks, you can bet some rain would make those suckers ready to snap shut. And they do, killing our killer. I mean, all of that makes a pretty compelling argument. Almost an open and shut case if there wasn't one final major criticism to the Phone Guy theory since the release of FNAF 3. And it's a good one. The fact that Phone Guy seems to die during his Night 4 phone call from the first game.
Hey, listen, I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you when I did.
If Phone Guy was the killer, why would the robots still be active after his death and the ghosts disappear? It just wouldn't make sense unless you stop to consider the rest of FNAF 3's endings. The big twist in FNAF 3 is the inclusion of a good and bad ending. By completing the game normally, you get the bad ending, in which we see Purple Guy die in a flashback minigame, and the whole thing ends with 5 masks representing the 5 main animatronics with lights on on behind their eyes. The good ending, meanwhile, requires using some not-so-subtly hidden clues to unlock minigames, then basically ignoring those games, glitching them out, and giving hidden dead kids cake to make them happy, obviously referring to the victims of Purple Guy. Beat the game this time, and the ending is largely the same, but with one fewer animatronic mask and no lights on. The obvious difference here is that in the good ending, the souls of the dead children have been put at peace. When they disappear for good. They don't go back to their animatronic bodies. But the bad ending? The lights on behind the eyes of all 5 masks mean that these guys are still active, angry.
I really like this theory, but my biggest problem, and I think this is one that FNAF has a lot. What the fuck is that? What ending is canon? Because FNAF 3, for all we know, could be the good ending because of FNAF's sister location and all this and yada yada yada. Maphead's not even wrong, but he's not right either because the way Scott Cawthon makes FNAF, you just never get the answers of what's canon, what's not canon.
Restless spirits still haunting the robots to this day. Because here's the thing, the good ending doesn't exist until you, as the player of the 3rd installment, give cake to those kids during FNAF 3's hidden minigames. What you play in FNAF 1, though, is the aftermath of the bad ending, when the animatronics have killed Phone Guy, but are still out for vengeance. Yeah, you made it through those first 5 nights at Freddy's. You overheard the death of the Purple Guy recorded live on the phone, but it wasn't enough. You got the bad ending. Even with the killer crippled in the back room in a spring-lock suit, the lights are still on in these animatronics. They're still roaming the halls, attacking anyone wearing that much-hated security guard outfit. People like Mike Schmidt, an innocent guy just trying to do his job at a failing pizza restaurant. And as the final nail in the coffin, what Phone Guy says in his Night 4 recording perfectly foreshadows what we see in the games.
Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm going to try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad. I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there.
Think about what Purple Guy does. He hides in a back room, the safe room, hides in a suit, and despite getting sprung-trapped, actually does hold out until someone checks. Holds out long enough for the phone dude to find the hidden safe room, recover the animatronic, and set him free in Fazbear Fright. Exactly what the Phone Guy said he'd do in his final moments. And as Springtrap, he comes back in FNAF 3. Comes back like he always does. And with no real animatronics present at Fazbear's Fright, remember Springtrap is the only real one they've found, with all the rest scattered, probably located in dumps, which is why their bodies and faces are decaying. All that the spirits can do is appear as phantoms, hallucinations. Well, all except one, the puppet, who we see in his physical form roaming the hallways of Fazbear Fright. So real, in fact, that we see his reflection, visible in the pools of water under his feet, meaning he is there and unburnt. There's only one way to truly end this. End the murderous Purple Guy, burning the place to the ground. The puppet gave robots life, gave spirits peace, and finally gave the murderer, the Phone Guy, his long-deserved death, or at least tried to. And that is the end of the Five Nights at Freddy's story. No hat, no movie, no 4th installment.
What? Oh, no! 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 Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh, what happened? What's wrong?
Look!
Oh no.
But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you enjoyed these theories, by subscribing to the channel.
Ready to be an e-commerce pioneer? Our baked-in premium plugins give you the best.
Sorry, Scott Cawthon. I'm tired of waiting for you. This time you'll have to keep up with me. Oh, never mind. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where instead of waiting for FNAF 4 to be released, this time we're getting out ahead of the game. Or at least that was the plan. Scott, I swear you are the biggest internet troll out there. Oh, it's being released October 31st. Okay, let me plan my entire schedule around that. Never mind, it's now in August. Okay, fine, let me rework everything. Lols, here's the full version now. You, Scott Cawthon, are the reason I have an emotional dependence on Diet Coke. But today I'll be sipping that sweet, sweet Diet Coke in sweet, sweet victory. Because guess what? I win! Scott, in your rush to get the game out, to get out ahead of my theories and completely flim-flam the internet and shock everyone by releasing the game 3 months early, you missed a huge detail. Maybe before releasing the game, you should have spent a bit more time researching, because this game, as you've presented it, is impossible. Let me explain. Basically, it's all but confirmed at this point that in FNAF 4 you play as the victim of the bite of 87, and that this game is either his nightmare or what he's seeing in a coma as he recovers from his injuries. Let me run you through the evidence real quick so that we're all on the same page. First, in the months leading up to the release of the game, there were clues hidden in the source code for some of the teasers on Scott's website, with the numbers 8787 repeated over and over again. Two numbers that anyone who hasn't been living under a rock will recognize as a key date in the franchise's lore, the bite of 87. This is further supported by the text on the teaser images. All of the pictures released on the site basically ask the same question: was it me? Which seems to refer to the actual attacker of the bite itself. But there was one more word we saw repeated throughout the teasers: nightmare. Hidden over top of multiple teaser images was that exact word. That, combined with the Freddy Krueger-ish design of the animatronics, with teeth and claws everywhere, something far different from how we've seen these things designed in the past, seemed to indicate that this would be the way a child would imagine these creatures if he had had a traumatic experience with them, making it seem like what we would be playing would be a dream. Couple that with some evidence from the trailer. The first words are, "What is it you think you see?" making us question the reality of the images in the game. But there was also something that everyone seemed to overlook about this trailer: the appearance of the number 4. Scott doesn't do things randomly, as I'm sure we're all aware by now. And notice the movement of the 4. It starts off in a horizontal plane, like it was laying down on something, say a bed, but then wakes up to stand vertically before the trailer ends. Even that remnant red rectangle is meant to symbolize the bed. Everything seems to be letting us know that what we're seeing isn't really real, it's a dream, or better yet, a nightmare. Now, fast forward to the game's release, or I suppose casually meander to the game's release since it wasn't too long afterwards, and we see that this theory still holds. Flowers, an IV, and pills will occasionally show up next to your bed. Classical medical supplies that show us that this is a child in recovery. Foxy, who's hiding in a closet, will transform back to a plush toy if you hold the door closed on him long enough, making it seem like this was all a dream or hallucination. And of course, the biggest piece of evidence of all, the cutscene that ends night 5, which, if you don't want a spoiler, click here to skip. All of you skipped now? Good. Actually shows the bite of 87 take place in the mouth of the golden Fredbear. This is further supported by the quote-unquote boss of the game being that same golden Fredbear, where in the final nights, he's the one who ends up stalking you. All the other animatronics disappear. You're being haunted by the suit that bit you. So yeah, that's it. All the evidence points to the victim of 87 being our protagonist, the character we're playing as in FNAF 4. Good job, Scott. You finally put together a game with a coherent plotline. Except you didn't. Scott Cawthon, if all of us are right in our theory, then you, sir, are wrong. Just when it looked like you were making a game that actually adhered to its own lore, you also made a game that is completely impossible from a scientific perspective. Loyal theorists, it's time we give Scott's latest bag of tricks a little lesson in real-life science. While frontal lobe injuries aren't as uncommon as people think, actually they happen all the time in car accidents, playing football, falling down, etc., Having your whole frontal lobe bitten off has a much more profound impact on mental and physical functions. It would come with a whole slew of symptoms from motor skill impairment to nervous system issues, but the side effects we're most concerned with today would all be psychological. Removal of the frontal lobe significantly impacts the victim's ability to process certain types of stimuli, specifically fear stimuli. Let me give you some backstory. In the good old 1940s and 50s, psychiatrists often thought the best way to cure problems with the brain were to cut pieces out. Feeling depressed? Well, let's slice that out. Overly aggressive? That chunk probably wasn't important. As such, there are extremely well-documented studies of patients without frontal lobes, and what's fascinating about them was what happened to their fear response. Patients without a frontal lobe become uninhibited because they no longer have a fear response. Way back in my Fallout episode, we looked in depth at the most famous accidental lobotomy in history, Phineas Gage, who literally had an iron rod shot straight through his head, completely destroying his left frontal lobe. One of the most striking differences between pre-pole Phineas and post-pole Phineas was his sense of inhibition. And by that I mean post-pole Phineas had none. He had no sense of caution, no sense of fear or self-consciousness. He was described to be impulsive to the point of being rude and vulgar in public. No fear, no anxiety, no social pressure anywhere. Going back to the game, one of the things Scott does a great job of throughout the FNAF franchise is putting you in the eyes of Mike or Jeremy or whoever. We feel invested in our protagonist because we are that character. But in this case, that's scientifically impossible, specifically because of the bite of 87. If the main character of this game truly is little Timmy lost a lobe, he wouldn't wander around a house clicking a flashlight on and off. Why would he? He doesn't care, because tragically, he no longer has the capacity to care. His brain structure no longer allows it. As if this weren't enough, a frontal lobe injury also tampers with concentration and attention span. The main character in the game is still supposed to be concentrated over a long period of multiple hours. But the thing is, patients without frontal lobes don't have this ability. In fact, they can only stay focused on what they see immediately happening in front of them. A child missing a frontal lobe who repeatedly turned a flashlight on and off in a hallway without seeing anything would lose interest. They wouldn't have the mental wiring necessary to concentrate on self-preservation. They would literally just go back to bed. The game is impossible the way it's being presented, because it would literally be over before it began. But the final and biggest nail in the coffin for this one is how frontal lobe injuries affect the imagination. The frontal lobe controls a ton of mental processing abilities, including dreams. You might think that an uncontrollable imagination would lead to exactly the kind of nightmares or hallucinations you see in this game, but in fact, it's the exact opposite. Rigorous studies have been done on the imaginations and dream states of lobotomized patients. While patients without a frontal lobe can have dreams, one thing they can't have is nightmares. Patients missing a frontal lobe carry their lack of fear and inhibition straight into their dreams. And why not? It makes sense. If the mind isn't registering fear consciously, there's no reason to process it subconsciously in a dream. Studies show that lobotomized patients can dream about idyllic scenarios, money, fame, praise, but they can't dream about the monsters under the bed, or in this case, the Foxy in the closet, making the nightmare state of FNAF 4 impossible for the victim of the bite of 87. In fact, going back to the dark days of psychiatry, some patients who experience the kind of recurring nightmare we see in FNAF 4 actually had their frontal lobes intentionally removed to stop these dreams from happening. One famous case describes a patient who was experiencing a recurring dream of being chased by ferocious animals. After the patient received the lobotomy in 1953, yes, he still had the dream, but would instead describe it as being a nice dream with some nice animals. His visions in the dream were no longer threatening. The animals were happy, he was happy, and he was no longer able to perceive any of the fear he once had prior to the surgery. So scientifically speaking, there is no single way the main character of FNAF 4 can be the bite of 87 victim like Scott seems to have indicated. Sure, the game could be about another kid, I guess, but that would be lame. No, this game is meant to be about the victim of the bite of 87. The poor kid who wasn't just attacked at the restaurant, but continues to be tortured through nightmarish visions, dreams, coma-induced hallucinations, whatever. I have zero doubt that that's what Scott intended, but the fact of the matter is, he just didn't do enough homework. A kid with those sorts of injuries wouldn't care about those things in the first place. He would have no fear, and there would be no animatronics, real or imaginary, that would be able to keep him up at night. Biologically speaking, nothing he would be experiencing would be any scarier than the fan. The fan. Sorry, Scott. Better luck in the movie. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. So that's the science of FNAF 4, but I'm...
Just first off, the movie was so long ago. Jesus Christ, I feel old. It hurts to remember that FNAF had a movie coming out in 2014 or 2015, and it took till 2023 for it to come out. But secondly, MatPat is wrong, not in his research or anything, but because Scott Cawthon chose the boring route of, hey, the frontal lobe victim, different guy. Like, what? Why? You can't let us have nice things. It's not even a bite of 87. It's the bite of 83. But anyway, we're gonna get to that.
working on picking apart the lore of Eve, Freddy. There's gotta be a code to open this. Bite of 87. Your text? I must be close. Incident of 83. One movie. 11 animatronics. 11 kids. One phone guy. One killer. Hex code for purple backwards. Is that Markiplier?
Yes, MatPat. It was me. It was me the whole time. And that's no theory.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to the Five Nights at Freddy's podcast. Sorry, I mean Game Theory. Game Theory, the show that covers theories on other games in the 2-week interval between new installments of FNAF. But if I'm ever gonna see requests for games other than FNAF 4 in my Twitter feed, this video needed to be made, because I have a confession, Internet. I made a mistake in my last FNAF video. Not in my research, mind you. My conclusion that this kid scientifically could not be the Bite of 87 victim was actually 100% right, both scientifically and, as you've been eager to point out, lore-wise. No, I was wrong in calling this the Bite of 87. I'm man enough to admit my mistakes. Hey, it's why they're called theories after all, right? Anyway, in this case, Scott was sure to let me know my error in his first comment on any of my videos on the franchise to my knowledge, which was really exciting, but it did leave me wondering, should I feel honored or trolled? And let me just say, because you were asking, I didn't delete that comment. I only delete comments from game theorist bots. No, I don't want your free PSN codes, okay? So I guess Scott must have deleted it himself. Maybe there was a typo. Or maybe a clue to FNAF 5. But before we get that far ahead, let's close the book on FNAF 4. First, let's set the record straight on where it takes place. It does not take place in Fredbear Family Diner, but rather the first location of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the one from the old phone guy tapes found in FNAF 3. But the spring-lock yellow suits are the only ones there, I hear you typing. And you're right, they obviously are, but remember, phone guy's tapes in FNAF 3 welcome you to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, not Fredbear Diner, before he tells you about their, quote, specially designed suits. Roll that cassette tape.
Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Right now we have 2 specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit.
Specially designed, i.e. not in existence during the Fredbear era. Plus, in that same set of phone calls, Phone Guy tells us the suits have become decommissioned after an incident where there were, quote, multiple simultaneous spring lock failures. What do we see at the end of FNAF 4? An incident where multiple spring locks fail simultaneously and a child dies. And let me be clear, because the terminology is pretty confusing. In the game, the word spring lock is used to describe both the suit as a whole and the individual locking mechanisms within that suit. A spring lock suit is made up of multiple spring locks. To have multiple simultaneous spring lock failures, like Phone Guy says, would either mean multiple suits going down at the same time, which is a bit coincidental and hard to believe, or that multiple locks within the same suit collapse at the same time, causing a catastrophic failure. Say, for instance, because a child is squirming to escape and his tears are moistening the locks. Crunch. And besides, don't you think it'd be weird for Fredbear's Diner to use these suits, have them kill a child, sell the company, and then Freddy Fazbear's Pizza starts using them again? It just wouldn't make a lot of sense. Long story long, although Fredbear and Springtrap are the featured attractions at this restaurant, this is a Freddy Fazbear branded joint, one dating back to, as we see on the TV set, 1983. But enough about the timeline. I don't want to dwell on it in this episode. To me, having a general placement of the timeline is enough because the most interesting part of this game is the ending and its overall meaning. Like I said in the other FNAF 4 video, if this was just a random kid who got bit, that would be really lame. So how does this particular kid fit into the overall lore? Why is this incident of 1983 so important to show? Who is the FNAF 4 kid, and what does the ending line of "I will put you back together" mean? Well, let me tell ya, the evidence points to him being the puppet. Let's look at the evidence. First, many have pointed out the streaming tears down the kid's face, which mimic the tears down the puppet's mask. Okay, sure, that was good evidence when we first saw them in FNAF 2, but at this point, those nice pixelated streams are on nearly every chubby-cheeked kid who's ever entered these restaurants. So alone, it's not much to go on. But we can take it one step further. While the tears themselves might not be interesting, look at this. It's a screen from the Mangle minigame back in FNAF 3. This weird, crying giant silhouette was just kinda out of place in the last game, and all us FNAF theorists just kinda glossed over it in our analyses, since, seriously, what is it? I mean, it kinda looks like the puppet, right? With its overall fabric feel and its thin striped legs. I mean, that's what I thought at the time, but again, there was really no reason to bring it up since it just didn't fit anywhere. But now we have a new game and new information that might make this make sense. Look at its body position. Notice anything specific about it? It resembles a position we see our FNAF 4 kid in a lot throughout the game, including his final scene, kneeling down, 2 streaming tear tracks, and his face turned 2/3 toward the camera. Do you see the connection here? But not only that, look at what our kid wears. A black and gray striped shirt. And remember, this is in a world where all the other kids are generally wearing single color outfits. It's an oddly specific detail. Now I ask you, what's the signature look for the puppet? None other than black and white stripes. But besides those design details, consider that there's no sign of the puppet anywhere in this game, and yet practically every other animatronic is present in some form, meaning that this game likely exists at a time when the puppet has yet to be created. Remember when he just kinda showed up in FNAF 2? Which, I should remind you, takes place 4 years later than this game. He just kinda came out of nowhere. Well, this could be the puppet's origin story. This idea of kid as puppet also works really well with the locked box at the end. What's in there besides Markiplier's stunning face and buttery voice? A puppet. As we see in FNAF 2, he has a habit of coming out of boxes, and he's the only one who can bend and fold up into a space that small. But there's even more evidence when you look at the timeline. Now, I challenge you to ask yourself one question. What exactly is the child afraid of in this game? Why does he hate the restaurant so much? The easy answer would seem to be the animatronics, but that'd be wrong. It's important to note that at the time of the cutscene minigames, he's not scared of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. When you walk over the pile of plushies in the corner, we see that he considers these characters as his friends. Foxy is kinda in that camp too, but to a slightly lesser degree because his brother has started scaring him with the Foxy mask, hence the head being pulled off. Even the weird psychic friend Fredbear isn't a scary presence for him. So clearly he's not scared of the characters. Is he scared of the people working at the restaurant? The purple guy? Maybe, but that's not quite the full answer either. Again, watch how he behaves. When trying to escape the worker in the Fredbear outfit, he can't muster the courage to run past the show stage with the yellow suits. He collapses in fear. And when the bullies drag him over to the stage, he's freaking out. Clearly, what he is specifically afraid of in this restaurant is the yellow Springtrap suits, whether in animatronic mode or suit mode, which begs one question. Why? Well, the answer lies in psychic friend Fredbear. Look at the dialogue running through the kid's head. Hurry the other way and find someone who will help. You know what happens if he catches you. That line would be easy to write off as this just being a scared kid who believes the ghost stories he's heard from the dead-eyed girl he talks to on the way home. She's creepy. If it wasn't for one thing, this other line. No. Don't you remember what you saw? This kid actually saw something, a crime, something terrible in these restaurants. It would seem to imply that he saw another child get shoved into one of these suits. This would also explain the strange brown pixels sticking out of the yellow body backstage. A tuft of hair, perhaps? All of these details also fit with the character I've been lovingly calling Psychic Friend Fredbear. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who are you gonna call? Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, seriously, what is this thing? Sometimes he's a bear, sometimes he's referencing it, and sometimes he's a flower? Okay. At first, it seemed like the creepy little toy was nothing but an imaginary friend. That was until the final moments after the bite, when we see the bear's signature yellow text. But this time, instead of parroting back the kid's feelings like he usually does, he shows that he is clearly in possession of a mind of his own, saying all kinds of creepy things like, "You're broken. We're still your friends. Don't you believe that? And I'm still here. I will put you back together." This isn't just a split personality of the kid or anything. This is a separate entity. This is a spirit. This is someone who knows the danger of getting caught by the people wearing those suits. This is the victim that our FNAF 4 kid saw getting stuffed. This is Golden Freddy, Purple Guy's first victim. And I know you're rushing into the comments now to say that this changes a lot of things and goes against stuff we've been saying for a while. But don't worry, we'll address it. Just get excited. We've pinpointed the identities of our two most mysterious animatronics. This is an awesome revelation from an evidence standpoint, but to be honest, it's a little disappointing from a storytelling standpoint. Here's why. We humans all have a proven psychological need to complete things. This need is called, unimaginatively, the completion principle. We want to fill in the blanks in the stuff around us so that the world makes sense and we feel in control. It's the biggest psychological reason why you want to beat a game, or even just an individual level. You know how you just can't stop and save in the middle of a level? You have to play until it's done. This is the reason why. Weirdly enough, it's even the reason why it's so hard to leave just one slice of cake, outside of sheer deliciousness, or leave out the last two pieces of a puzzle. I mean, even just looking at it on the screen, Earl, just put the piece in. Just finish the last two just animate the pieces to move over into the open slots, and I beg you, just finish the last... Thank you. This isn't just you being, OMG, I'm so OCD. It's actually because the brain is wired to respond to knowing when you're done with a task. The brain can now take the mental energy it was using to focus on that activity and use it on something else. But what happens if you don't finish that piece of cake? Or if you walk away from a game right before beating the level? Your brain can't put that activity away because it's still not finished. You literally continue to spend mental energy on it in the background, even when you're doing other things. As long as there are unknowns, your brain can't feel in total control and can't let things go. And whether he knew this when creating the first FNAF game or not, Scott Cawthon has done an amazing and infuriating job of creating a story that looks like it goes one way, but also looks like it might go somewhere else. This keeps us thinking about FNAF lore, talking about FNAF lore, pestering our favorite YouTube theorists for more FNAF lore for weeks, months, watching every video released on everything from top 10 details you missed in the FNAF 4 teaser to top 10 facts about the cupcake. The cupcake! 10 facts about the cupcake. Seriously. Once we're into the lore, our brains literally cannot let the pieces go until there's some kind of resolution, a completed story. But Scott has done such a good job of keeping the game in flux that the pieces never quite feel like they fit in a way that feels satisfying. We never get that moment of ROLAIDS. That spells relief. So we want the pieces of the puzzle to fit together cleanly, and the problem with FNAF is that while there's plenty of evidence for the story to go one way, there's also evidence for it going somewhere else. Try this one on for size. Well, there's a lot of evidence for the kid in FNAF 4 being the puppet, and I'd bet my bottom dollar that that's the solution that Scott intended. From a storytelling standpoint, more pieces actually fit together if the FNAF 4 kid becomes Golden Freddy and not the puppet. This would make our first victim, the one our FNAF 4 kid sees get killed, the puppet, like we've been hypothesizing since FNAF 2. Suddenly, you have a group of 5 kids celebrating a birthday, one kid associated with each animatronic, with the one representing Golden Freddy being the odd man out. And this scenario perfectly mimics the FNAF 3 good ending with the Happiest Day minigame, where 5 souls from 5 kids, each representing a different animatronic, reunite to celebrate a birthday that never really happened. It actually creates a beautifully bookended story of redemption and forgiveness, a reunion of brothers. And yeah, I know the complaints. Don't get me started about the size of the kids being different. They're the spirits of dead children in an 8-bit minigame, okay? Literalizing the sizes seems to be a bit of a stretch. And it goes even further than that. In the FNAF 2 Give Gifts minigame, the puppet gives life to the dead children, with Golden Freddy as the odd man out who doesn't get a mask and does a ghostly jump scare at the end. That would reflect the 4 bullies getting killed in the pizzeria by Purple Guy in response to this incident, while the one, Golden Freddy, dies somewhere else, like a hospital bed. I mean, we do see the IV and pills and flowers, and as a result, that's why the puppet, the first victim, is able to reach those 4 kids' souls and save them, while Golden Freddy has to behave like a ghost. It also gels with the idea that the Take Cake minigame represents the first victim at the first location, and why the puppet is always the jump scare, because he's the kid we've just watched get killed. So a lot of storytelling pieces fit together, but at the end of the day, that leaves us with too many questions about why Golden Freddy is talking to our FNAF 4 kid. A spirit needs to be inhabiting that bear for the story to make sense, and Scott certainly put in plenty of evidence that leads us to believe that the FNAF 4 kid is the puppet. The FNAF 4 kid needs to have seen a tragic, scary incident to make him fear the restaurant, which means he can't have been the first kid to have been killed. In short, the challenge here is that you have a choice. There's more evidence for our FNAF 4.
So, this is one of the biggest questions with FNAF that it came out a long time ago. This has been kind of answered because Scott changed a lot of things. Like the FNAF, so the puppet was male, and then I think FNAF's a mess sometimes because genders of characters have changed specifically for one character, and I don't remember if it's for the puppet or for Golden Freddy. It's a mess. Because one of the characters had their gender changed from male to female. So I think it was the puppet, but it doesn't really matter because we do get this question to answer who the puppet is and who Golden Freddy, all this stuff is. But man, it was a big question. Who was who? Because Scott didn't explain who's what. And you know, back when this came out, this was a big debate. Who is the puppet? Who is Golden Freddy? And all that stuff was a big question. But not just this. I think FNAF and the rest of the series brought up a lot of questions. Also, Map has completionist theory thing. It makes sense for some people, but not everyone has that completion thing going on in their brain. Some people just can't pick up a game again. Now, maybe that's because I've picked up like even with streamer brain, some people just don't want to pick up a game or do any of it because now they feel like they're obligated to do the thing, and they actually put the game down more than wanting to pick it up because now they feel like there's an obligation to doing it, and that's also a thing that happens. But besides the point, this video came out back at a crucial time when Scott didn't explain anything. So Map has not entirely wrong, but he's not also right.
Kid becoming the puppet, but the resulting story is more satisfying for him to become Golden Freddy, and either side leaves you wanting more because not all of the evidence works in either scenario, and that is the true secret to FNAF. The completion principle demands that we get answers, that the scraps of evidence across the 4 games come together cleanly, but if and when they do, our brains will just be able to move on and forget about it, making it just another game that we played and is collecting dust on our shelf, or taking up memory space in our Steam account, I guess. In the meantime, good on Scott for making sure FNAF is always on our minds. He didn't do it by giving us endless levels or a whole bunch of stuff to complete. He did it just by making sure the pieces that are there are never quite enough. So GG, Scott. GG. And GG to all of you too, theorists. All of us. For trying to complete the story and solve the mysteries. I may complain about it, but honestly, I've been having a blast. It's like the Gravity Falls of video games. It's been my honor to work with all of you on this quest over the last year, and I look forward to trying to continue the quest in the year to come. In fact, since this has been a video many of you have been waiting for a long time, now that it's finally out, this Thursday at 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, I'll be live streaming right here on the game.
Today is the 23rd of November 2003, and Gaza is still under...
Today, we end the horror. Today, we solve FNAF. Internet, welcome to Game Theory, where, after months of intensive therapy, I'm back to finally put the original FNAF tetralogy to rest. It's done. No more Halloween updates, no more FNAF 5 rumors, and no more fan. Suck on that, you multi-bladed propeller of air. So shortly after my last Freddy theory, I arranged a live stream with some fellow FNAFers to close the book on the series. And what happened was something that none of us expected. We have internet, we're back. No, not the stream issues. Scott started talking to us. Well, kinda. He kept updating his site, scottgames.com, with cryptic messages as to the true meaning of the game. What is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. In the FNAF 4 minigame, why would the tiny toy Chica be missing her beak? And finally, 4 games, 1 story. It was incredible! After a year of taking shots in the dark, finally we were, in a way, hearing back from the man who knew all the answers. Scott Cawthon, the creator, was reaching out from the shadows to give us, for pretty much the first time ever, concrete leads as to where to look. But what did these cryptic clues mean? In the moment, the best I could do was this. Is it possible that FNAF 2 didn't actually happen? But in the days that followed, those 3 clues led theorists on Reddit, Steam, and YouTube to completely throw out everything that they knew about the franchise. What if we were looking at the franchise all wrong? Instead of counting animatronic toes, calculating minimum wage rates, and tracking Purple Guy's work history, maybe we needed to take a step back. What if everything in FNAF was just a dream? That's right, a FNAF dream theory, that everything we play through in these games was created in the mind of the FNAF 4's crying child. It sounds like a cop-out, right? Like a lazy storytelling cliche. Maybe. But stay with me. Even if you think you've heard parts of this theory before, you'll want to stick around. I've unearthed the clues that finally put our year and a half of FNAF speculating to rest. Of the 3 clues Scott gave us that day, the most damning one was the last one. Why would tiny toy Chica be missing her beak? What? In the FNAF 4 minigame, you can talk to a small girl on the playground with toy versions of Bonnie, Freddy, and Chica, but her beak is missing? During the stream, we were all like, Scott, please. But when we looked, sure enough, there it was. A few orange pixels laying on the ground. What? Seriously? This was the crucial detail all of us had missed. And yet, for as absurd as it may sound, those 5 pixels changed everything, upending a year worth of theorizing. Because that missing beak directly parallels FNAF 2's new version of Chica, who loses her beak when she goes on the attack. It was something we all had written off as a graphical glitch or a design choice, not as a clue to the meaning of the entire series. And yet, here it was from the creator's mouth. And that is when it started to click. FNAF 2's shiny new animatronics. What are they called? Toy animatronics. And that's not just a cute name the community came up with, like Freddles. It's right there in the custom night menu. It's canon. That's a strange name for a bunch of robots, right? Unless it's meant to be taken literally, and then they're all just a bunch of... Oh my god. What if they are toys, and this is all just a dream scenario inspired by these little guys? Well, let's keep going with this toy clue. I mean, obviously, the toy animatronics are shiny, plastic-looking fake, just like a small plastic action figure would be. But it explains a bigger question about FNAF 2, the look and design of Mangle. I mean, seriously, the story we're told to believe in this game is pretty absurd, that kids just rip it apart and put it back together again, and so the employees just leave it as a mangled collection of parts for small children to play with. What parent would ever be comfortable letting little Timmy touch that thing? Oh, and here's a cute thing for you to play with. Oh my gosh, who could have seen that coming? But if we assume FNAF 2 is in the mind of a child who has seen all these toys, Mangle makes a whole lot more sense. He's just a dismantled toy. Think about Sid from Toy Story, who fuses various toys together to create hideous abominations. This explains Mangle's two heads. I don't care how much you redesign Foxy, no one planned him to have two heads. In fact, note that Mangle appears in a girl's room. An insignificant detail? I don't think so. The Chica Beak shows that this girl's toys fall apart, just like Mangle, the tear-apart, put-back together toy. And toys explain FNAF 1, too. The crying child of FNAF 4 has 4 plushies in his room. The crew from FNAF 1. Plushies, as in soft, stuffed animals. What are the original 4 animatronics made out of? Soft materials. Fur and fabric, not plastic like the toys. So much so that the one thing that we hear about them throughout the series is that these old animatronics collect odors and never get washed, just like an overused and overloved stuffed animal. But the parallels don't stop there. Why is Foxy out of order in FNAF 1? Well, the plushie he's based on is missing its head. How about Foxy's jump scare popping in abruptly from behind a wall? It's awfully similar to the way the brother scares the crying child throughout FNAF 4. In his Foxy mask, no less. And how's Golden Freddy fit into this? Well, in the hidden FNAF 4 Easter egg, we see on the TV that the show Fredbear and Friends features the Golden Fredbear alongside the core 4 of Foxy, Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. That's your cast from the first game. The dream of FNAF 1 was inspired by this show and the plushies, hence it not containing any of the other animatronics. Even the fact that the child doesn't have a Golden Freddy plush, and that instead he has his imaginary friend, psychic friend Fredbear, who appears and disappears at will, directly references Golden Freddy's ghostly behavior in FNAF 1 and 2. In fact, every game, design detail, and animatronic can be explained under this theory. The recurring elements of the phone and the fan, right there from some of his favorite toys. The fact that no one in their right mind would work in a place like this? Dream. Firing an employee for something like odor? It's a child's imagination of what employment is like. How about the weird metaphysical hoops that you have to jump through to access FNAF 3's minigames? Well, dreams have weird rules where dialing codes into cinder blocks makes perfect sense. FNAF 3's Springtrap is directly inspired by the girl in her golden body finger puppet that pinches and traps her finger. The idea that the animatronics stuff you into suits comes from this girl spreading the urban legend that if you die, they hide your body and never tell. The naked endoskeletons come from his time trapped in the supply room. Balloon Boy is the dream version of this kid, excited to go to the birthday party. They even have a single balloon each. Even the oddballs of Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie fit under this theory. They're the product of the crying child being freaked out by the shadows that Golden Freddy and Bonnie cast onto the wall. And while we're on the subject of shadows, Dream Theory even rolls up the purple guy. Let's pull in Scott's second clue. What is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. Yes, he could be referencing the shadow animatronics, which are literal shadows, but what he's more likely referencing is Purple Guy helping a fellow employee put on the yellow suit. They're in a dark, shadowy room, and what the kid sees, or what he thinks he sees, is someone getting violently stuffed into a suit when it's just a mascot putting on its head. Think about how traumatic it'd be if you were a kid and you were at Disneyland and then saw Mickey Mouse suddenly take off its head. It would blow your mind. But we all know that there's no murder happening. It's just employees going about the daily grind. In fact, that's why Purple Guy is purple. In the Atari-style games, shadows are represented not with black, but with purple, as indicated by the shadows cast by the the animatronics on stage. That's why Shadow Freddy, Shadow Bonnie, and even the innocent employee in the dark back room, the shadowy purple guy, are such an unusual color. Still skeptical? So was I. Sure, it answers a lot and smooths out the timeline, but there was still one piece of the puzzle that was missing. One thing that was nagging me. It still felt like a convenient explanation, but not an intentional one. Not something that Scott had planned for the series. All I needed was just that one detail that made everything fit together. But then, while writing this script, it finally dawned on me. The nail in the coffin. The one piece of evidence that no one can deny and that, to my knowledge, no one has talked about in the months of theorizing. The detail that convinced me this theory has to be true. Are you ready to have your mind blown? Listen to the sound that you hear at the end of every night of the first 3 games. A grandfather clock, chiming the same song every time. Why would the end of my shift in an office be signaled by a grandfather clock chime? It wouldn't, unless I was asleep, dreaming in my house with a grandfather clock right outside my room. Just like the layout of the crying child's house we see in the FNAF 4 minigames. 6 o'clock a.m., time to get up. But now let's look at FNAF 4. How does each night end there? A beeping alarm clock. Why? Because we're no longer in the crying child's house. We're in a hospital, trying to recover from being bitten. Hence the pills, IV, and flower Easter eggs. No hospital has a grandfather clock, but they're all equipped with a generic digital alarm clock. This, to me, was the missing link, the piece of evidence that took this theory from convenient explanation for a lot of the game's weirdness to definitive proof that this is what Scott intended. My heart is racing right now. I'm so excited about sharing this with you. It feels like finding the Rosetta Stone, the one detail that unlocks everything else in this huge mystery we've been trying to solve. But at the same time, it's bittersweet, right? Remember what I said at the beginning of the episode? It sounds like a cop-out, right? Like a lazy storytelling cliche. How many of you agreed with that? If you're honest with yourself, I bet a lot of you. You'll notice across my videos I don't cover dream and coma theories very often for exactly that reason. They're too easy, too flexible, because it's all a dream.
I actually really like this theory because it's one of MatPat's theories that makes so much sense, despite it being wrong, as we'll see later. But it feels like it's the right way FNAF was going because of the way Scott did a lot of stuff. And if you told me that it was, and then he changed it, I would be like, yeah, no, that checks out. Because there's so much stuff with this theory when it came out that made so much sense. Even when the next one came out, it still had me like going, wait, that kind of makes sense. Like it made so much sense with the clock and everything. It would actually start to explain why FNAF has such weird stuff, but that's something Scott never actually answers. He never answers why the fuck do you have the clock, or is that just to make you feel more relaxed? Or is it, like, he never answers that ever. So it just leaves us with questions that never get answered. Anyway, let's go back to the video.
Weird stuff can be written off, logical errors overlooked simply because it's not actually real. In the theory world, they're OP. They're hard to argue against and can be molded to fit any random collection of details. And for a game like FNAF, where us theorists have spent thousands of hours combing through all the details, making and remaking timelines, bending over backwards to make every last piece of information fit together across the 4 games, it was just a dream reveal invalidates all of that work. It says that none of it really mattered since none of it really happened. And Scott knows this. Let's look at a quote from Scott in his update on Steam regarding the Halloween DLC for FNAF 4. Quote, "The story remains completely hidden. I guess most people assumed that I filled the game with random Easter eggs this time. I didn't. What's in the box? It's the pieces put together. But the bigger question is, would the community accept it that way? The fact that the pieces have remained elusive this time strikes me as incredible and special. A fitting conclusion in some ways, and because of that, I've decided that maybe some things are best left forgotten forever, end quote. To me, the key phrase here is, would the community accept it that way? He knows that a "it's all a dream" explanation would fail to live up to our astronomical expectations. It's underwhelming. What about the puppet? What about the oddly specific detail of the paychecks? How about Scott confirming on Steam that my FNAF 2 theory was almost 100% correct? It's this "will the community accept it" quote that makes me think Scott intended the dream theory to be official, but also understands that ever revealing it would be a huge mistake. Hence him keeping it locked in the box. I mean, you can already see it in the comment threads discussing earlier versions of the dream theory. People enraged by the sheer mention of this thing. Heck, you'll probably see it in this comment section. But it doesn't have to be that way. Sure, the nights themselves may be a series of dreams, but the lore contained within those dreams doesn't have to be meaningless. In fact, it's not. Think about it. The urban legends the kids are sharing had to start somewhere. That crying child clearly saw something that made him scared of these restaurants. And then how do the Atari games fit in? Are they just dreams within dreams? They're not. In researching this episode, I not only found the clues that solidify the dream theory, but also the missing links that we've all been overlooking in putting the FNAF timeline together. Scott's final clue about 4 games, 1 story may be a reference to a crying child's nightmares and eventual death in the hospital, but it can also be referencing the story of the game's primary struggle, the puppet and the purple guy. And next week, we're covering that on an all-new Game Theory, Saturday the 19th at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. That's noon for all of you. It is possible to put together the pieces of FNAF. It's just a nightmare trying to do it. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where it's another day, another FNAF timeline. Don't worry though, I promise this will be my final stab at putting it all together, at least until FNAF World. Maybe that means I can finally do Undertale. You guys want that one, right? Seems like a popular choice. Let me know in the comments. Now let me start this episode by making it very clear. I think the Dream Theory is indeed what Scott intended, where the minigames featuring the crying child from FNAF 4 are real, i.e. there's really a birthday party and he really gets bitten, and the events of each night at Freddy's across the 4 games where a security guard is attacked by robots is taking place in his mind. Like I said last episode, the clock sounds coupled with Scott's own statements both during the live stream and on Steam sold me 100% on that theory. That said, I, like a lot of you, aren't 100% satisfied with that explanation. Sure, the core gameplay sequences with you as the security guard might all be in the mind of a child, but the underlying story here about a serial killer stalking the halls of the restaurant are just too detailed and too well fleshed out to just be a wash. Here, to me, are the big issues that the Dream Theory doesn't address. 1. The crying child is afraid of those yellow suits for a reason. Remember what you saw. You know what will happen if he catches you. These are lines that his imaginary friend Fredbear repeats over and over. It feels a lot more sinister and real than just, oh, this kid saw something scary and misunderstood it in the shadows. 2. The puppet doesn't have a good explanation under Dream Theory. Clearly, the puppet is one of the most important forces in this game, but he doesn't fit into the dream model cleanly. A lot of other theorists have said it's symbolic of the boy's actions in his own dreams, but later this episode I'll prove that that's not true. If anything, the boy would be the security guard in these dreams, helpless and scared, not the puppet. I'm not buying it. 3. Scott confirmed the bulk of my FNAF 2 theory. This would be a strange move for him to go out of his way to say that a chain of events was correct if it was truly meaningless. And finally, number 4. The Atari minigames. Under Dream Theory, what? They're just dreams within dreams? What is this, 5 Nights at Inception? And then there are plenty of little issues too, like a young child's dreams being so detailed as to include concepts that even most adults don't know, like sister locations and accurate minimum wage rates. So I combed over everything from the past year of theorizing to come up with the most well-supported, interesting, but also logical timeline of events telling the story of the rise and fall of Freddy Fazbear's. Admittedly, there are still gaps and logical leaps, which I'll be sure to call out, but right or wrong, this is the flow of events I believe creates the most satisfying narrative to the series. So this one is dedicated to all you guys on Reddit, YouTube, Twitter, and in the comments who have been sending me theories for months. Think of this as my end of the year present for you. Right or wrong, this box is getting opened. The story begins at Fredbear Family Diner, the first location as revealed to us by Phone Guy in FNAF 2, and confirmed indirectly by Scott when he approved my FNAF 2 theory. I don't honestly think that there's much to debate here anymore. A child is murdered outside the establishment by a mysterious figure, the Purple Guy, who escapes unnoticed. The victim's restless soul goes on to inhabit a puppet, which would then haunt the halls of the pizzeria. Boom! Done. No need to dwell on that. In the wake of the tragedy, the owners sell the name of Fredbear and the character's likeness to a larger company that will soon be known as Fazbear Entertainment. From there, the timeline picks up in 1983, as seen on the Crying Child's television set. Since buying the franchise, Fazbear Entertainment has distanced themselves from the last restaurant by redesigning Fredbear into a golden singer with a yellow rabbit partner. They've also rolled out a popular TV series, Fredbear and Friends, as well as a line of merchandise that includes both plastic toys and plushies of all the characters. But perhaps the biggest addition has been a sister location of restaurants where Fredbear's friends are headlining. Freddy, Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie, known as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And that is our first major revelation, that FNAF 4's Fredbear themed restaurant and FNAF 1's Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location are open at the same time. We know this thanks to the Phone Guy tapes uncovered in FNAF 3. For those of you who haven't listened to those enough times to have them memorized, I am so jealous of your life. But secondly, let me refresh your memories. The tapes welcome you to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and then mention a tragic incident at a sister location which results in the yellow spring-lock suits being decommissioned. So let me translate that for you. For all of us unfamiliar with corporate buzzwords, a sister location is defined as another company owned by the same parent company. For example, KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell are all sister companies, with the parent company that holds them all together being Yum Brands. Yum is right. I could totally go for some Pizza Hut right now. Pizza Hut Lunch Buffet, you are the best! Hashtag not sponsored. In this case, FNAF 4's Fredbear's is the sister location to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, with the parent company being Fazbear Entertainment. Corporate structure for the win! What all of this means is that the unfortunate incident that Phone Guy mentions in the FNAF 3 tapes is the crying child getting chomped, which in turn is the inciting event that causes the two recently delivered yellow suits to the FNAF 1 location, the Golden Freddy and Golden Bonnie suit Phone Guy talks about, to be stored away in the location's safe room. At this point in the timeline, still open and hidden in the back of the restaurant. Enter Purple Guy. Shortly after the yellow suits get decommissioned, more FNAF 3 tapes reveal Phone Guy warning employees to not bring customers back to the safe room and to stop moving the yellow Bonnie suit. In the following days, the safe room gets sealed with the request to, quote, not tell family, friends, or insurance representatives. Now, Phone Guy may be unaware of what's happening here, but we're not. This is June 26th, 1983, the date of the missing children incident we learn about through the newspaper clippings pasted on the walls of FNAF 1, where, in the middle of the day, an employee dresses in a costume, lures 5 children to the back, kills them, and then stuffs their bodies into the suits. Although he's caught and taken into custody, the fact that all of this takes place in the restaurant's safe room, which remember are invisible to animatronics and security cameras, means that the actual murders aren't on camera. As such, the bodies of the children remain missing, hidden in the suits, and the killer can't be charged due to a lack of evidence. This is all represented in the game by the Foxy Go 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 minigame, where the layout of the game parallels the layout of the FNAF 1 location. Pirate Cove, to the right, a dining area. And as we see in the Give Gifts, Give Life minigame from FNAF 2, the puppet saves the kids by giving them life inside the animatronic suits. So now at this point in the timeline, we have Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, Golden Freddy, and the puppet alive and well. Well, not alive, dead, and then reborn. You get the idea. Also, the company closes up the safe rooms to avoid all liability for the murders, and eventually the pizzeria is closed and the old animatronics retired due to the health conditions of the restaurant. As we see once again in the newspaper clippings from FNAF 1, the smell of rotting bodies inside the machines starts stinking up the place. So now let's pause there for a second. Up to now, everything has been pretty well substantiated with evidence, but before we get too much further, let's take a minute back with the crying child. Remember, one of my biggest concerns about Dream Theory is that the crying child is scared of the yellow suits, but there's no real good explanation as to why. So what if the reason the crying child is scared of the yellow suits is because he saw the missing children's incident? What if he saw the employee dressed up as a yellow animatronic luring the children away? Yes, this would mean that the missing children's incident would happen before the yellow suits are retired and before the kid gets bitten, but it's a theory that works for a lot of different reasons. First, he's always at the pizzerias, especially towards the end of the day, so he'd definitely be in a position to see something like this. Second, it explains his irrational fear of the yellow suits because he saw people get taken to the back and never return. Third, the lines of "remember what you saw" and "you know what will happen if he catches you" that psychic friend Fredbear keeps repeating makes a whole lot more sense now. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, look at this line. "These are my friends." If this were indeed true, this line takes on a whole new meaning. I always thought that line was weird. Like, what, they're your imaginary friends? I suppose, but then why would his collection of plushies just be with him when he dies? Why is that such an important detail that Scott chose to include? It wouldn't be, really, but what if they were literally his friends? That he knew the kids who went missing and got stuffed, and the plushies being there in the final scene represented not his plushies, but the spirit of his friends, the ones possessing the suits, being there with him as he dies. Now that gives you a reason to be scared of this restaurant. But we can take it one step further. There's one more issue with the crying child we've yet to cover. What happens to him when he dies at the end of FNAF 4? My original theory put him in the puppet because of design details, but in retrospect, that was wrong. Reddit user 3IEYIJ Reddit user 3IEJ did an analysis of the color of the text during the ending sequence. All of the final lines aren't in the yellow used for psychic friend Fredbear, but rather a mysterious new off-white color for the final lines of "You're broken, I will put you back together." It's a subtle detail, but it's very clear that this is an intentional difference that Scott included in the games. So who's speaking? Well, who else but the one figure we know gives life to children dying in events around the Fazbear Entertainment franchise. It's the puppet, promising to right the wrongs of the pizzeria by bringing peace to the crying child's spirit. How does he plan to do this? Well, look at what he says. "We are still your friends." It's not "I am still your friend." The puppet using the plural here means that there would be multiple spirits present in this final scene that consider themselves friends to the crying child, but we also see this: "I am still here." The others are gone now, stuffed, leaving only the one with the ability to transcend the animatronic suits, the puppet. This makes a lot of sense if we again assume the crying child knew the kids who got stuffed during the missing children's incident. And look at the last line the puppet says: "I will put you back together." We've all been assuming his "you" is referring to the crying child, but consider for a minute that the puppet is instead playing the pronoun game, to steal a phrase from CinemaSins, and is instead referring to the plural "you." "You 5 are broken, and I will put you 5 back together." He's planning on reuniting the spirits of these 5 friends. What makes me so sure? Well, we see it happen. It's the conclusion to the whole story. In FNAF 3's The Happiest Day minigame, we see the crying child's birthday one more time. 5 kids in masks representing the same 5 animatronics, with the birthday boy representing Golden Fredbear. You can even compare the locations. Both are long corridors with 3 tables and a 4th one slightly off to the side. The balloons are also the same colors: red, green, purple, yellow, and blue. Even the exit is where the Fredbear stage is, an exit that, if used, results in the bad ending because the souls don't get peace. It's where the child was chomped. And who's the one we see in this minigame putting everyone back together again? The puppet, just like he promised the boy he would do on his deathbed. And here's the best part. How do you get to this minigame? Well, by playing through a bunch of others, including the Stage 01 game, which you access by typing the numbers 395248 into the wall. Why are those numbers important? It's the hexadecimal code for the color of purple guy, only it's backwards. It's Scott's way of showing that the puppet is actively trying to reverse the work of the purple guy and the atrocities committed inside the walls of Fazbear Entertainment pizza places. From here, the rest of the story is surprisingly straightforward. The pizza chain reopens during the summer of 1987 in FNAF 2's bigger location. Fazbear Entertainment rolls out the toy animatronics based on the character models of their merchandise, allows them to free roam, and even equips them with facial recognition software as added protection against child murderers. I mean, there's definitely a pattern being established here, so good on them for taking preventative measures. However, as we all know, it's not enough. As we hear about from the phone guy and see in the Save Them minigame, the purple guy, now the daytime security guard, kills 5 more kids within the walls of this restaurant. When the puppet enlists the help of the possessed Freddy animatronic to save the kids, the purple guy responds, "You can't, because it's true. They're already dead." That said, a case can be made that the puppet successfully gets these 5 souls into animatronics too. Notice that before this, 6 characters were possessed, but now there are 5 new animatronics in this location. Toy Bonnie, Toy Freddy, Toy Chica, Mangle, and Balloon Boy. 5 spirits for 5 robots? Quite the coincidence, don't you think? Additionally, we hear from Phone Guy that around this time, the toy animatronics inexplicably become more aggressive towards adults, but stay friendly towards kids. The only explanation here is that the 5 new child spirits are given life in the new toy suits by the puppets, but these spirits are angry. The pizzeria is gonna close, but not before one final birthday party, where angry and eager for revenge against their killer, these newly created, possessed toy animatronics lash out at their murderer, the purple guy, who they know as the daytime security guard. Except, bad news, purple guy is long gone. He did his business and got out. In his place is Jeremy, night security guard moved to the day shift, wrongfully attacked by a vengeful toy animatronic the day of the birthday, losing his frontal lobe and coining the now iconic Bite of 87 moniker in the process. This causes the location to be shut down and the toys to be scrapped. Animatronics from here on out are no longer allowed to walk around, and with Jeremy out of commission, Phone Guy volunteers to take over the position of night guard, which brings us to our conclusion. The story comes to a final head in 1993. We know it's that year because of the minimum wage rate at the time, as well as the 11/12 date on the check. It doesn't matter if you're working night or day shift, all workers get paid on Fridays, and November 12th, 1993 landed on a Friday. It just fits. So Fazbear Entertainment tries to reopen the FNAF 1 location with the original animatronics and Phone Guy as security night guard. With the restaurant reopened one final time, we see this scene, where the puppet is waking up the spirits inside the animatronics one final time. It's time to get their revenge on Purple Guy at last. Phone Guy gets killed, and as we see in the final news article on the wall, no one comes to the restaurant because of its dark, tragic history, with the franchise closing at the end of the year. Sometime after, Purple Guy returns to the building, dismantles the suits, but in doing so, unwittingly unleashes the spirits of the dead children, who attack and kill him, and if they're reunited by the puppet in Happiest Day, finally receive their peace. Well, that is until Fazbear Fright opens and unearths Springtrap, but with all the other animatronics at peace, the puppet must get his hands dirty one final time, returning to burn down the building and finish Purple Guy off for good. Or not, like any good horror story ends. So what about the Phantom animatronics, Shadow Freddy, and all that? Stay tuned, we're going to talk about those during the live stream immediately after this episode. The video's getting really long at this point, so I want to kind of close it out here. But as we close out here, I have to ask you this. Was that answer satisfying? You see, that's the beauty of the dream theory and the frustration of anything else. There's so much lore, so many puzzle pieces to fit together that in order to account for everything, the story can't get much simpler than that. Dream theory in this instance is so satisfying here because it explains all the messiness of the lore in broad, easy to understand strokes without you needing a PhD in FNAFology to understand what's going on. Sure, it is possible to fit the details together cleanly, but it's not an easy to follow story. It's almost like you need a full-length book to truly put all the pieces together. Okay, I get it. Scrap everything I just said. Scott's got a book. Another FNAF video made moot by a Scott Cawthon announcement. Or not. This This is actually a last-minute update. I'm recording this literally hours before the video and live stream tomorrow, but it was just too important to leave out, because it looks like Scott agrees with my conclusion. For once, the story is indeed just too crowded to be satisfying. When talking about the new novel, which, true to form, released early, he said the following, quote, "The truth is that after a while, lore becomes so dense that there isn't room for a story anymore. Sometimes the timeline gets so full that the only way to tell a real story is to have the story set in a different timeline," end quote. So there you have it. Dream theory for your simple answer, and a 20-minute long timeline for those of you who want something a bit more complete. So which do you find more satisfying? Well, let's talk about all of that live right now.
So we're not gonna watch the live stream. I'm not that insane. Like the rest of this is a live stream. I'll actually fucking die. I'll watch the other FNAF video. I will not watch the live stream. I'm not ready to die, especially since it's a really old live stream. I'm not ready to die. But also. That's a lie from Scott if I've ever seen it. Different timeline. Oh, the games are literally, the games and books are intertwined to the point. Hell, the story in the games and the timeline are so intertwined at this point. Like, you can't even look at the next FNAF game without the book. And the book's not even supposed to be like the canon timeline. All the stuff in the book you have to know for the game. And the next games, it's about the same guy. What do you mean? Oh my god. This is the most painful line. Not from MatPat, but from Scott himself. I'm sorry. Like, yes, we are ending the ending this in a little bit. But it's so insane to see this man go, guys, I don't want to overcrowd FNAF and all this stuff. And then you see we got like 10 games, bro. What do you mean? And they're all tied together, never stopping the story. I mean, the Purple Guy Saga ended, but now we have the Glitch Purple Guy Saga, which is just the Purple Guy Saga. But he's not human. Wow. What a step up. Because now it's just AI memory remnant stuff. Like, that didn't solve the problem. It's still following the same plot, except it's just an emotion, like a less human version of the character. You just gave me the same plot with more machines. Ugh. But yeah, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.